Sankirtan, Jagna Ki Jai, Vihamadama chants in the book distribution of Sri Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. The Transcendental Lordship Shri Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhamadava Ki Jai. Shri Shri Prahlad Nrsimha Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Prema. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter, or Canto 9, chapter 10, chapters entitled The Pastimes of Lord Rāmacandra. Today we're covering text 9, 10, and 11. So we have, what do we have on the board? Is it 11? 11. Okay. So what do? Do I just chant? We, on the first part. Okay, let's see how I do. Rākṣasa Ashura Vyakta Rupam Ashuta Ludes Dakṣa Khara Triśira and Dūṣaṇa Mukya Bandhum Jagne Chaturdasha Sahasram Aparaniya Kodanda Panir Atmana Uvasha Kricham. While wandering in a forest where he accepted a life of hardship, carrying his invincible bow and arrows in his hand, Lord Rāmacandra deformed Rāvaṇa's sister, who was polluted with lusty desires, by cutting off her nose and ears. He also killed her 14,000 Rākṣasa friends, headed by Khara, Triśira and Dūṣaṇa. Text 10. Sītā Sravana Shayena Shistam Vilokya Atedashakam Dharena Jagne Bhutaina Rapushash Amato Prakristo Aricham Ashu Vishena Yatakam Ugraha. O King Parīkṣit, when Ravana, who had 10 heads on his shoulders, heard about the beautiful and attractive features of Sītā, his mind was agitated by lusty desires, and he went to kidnap her. To distract Lord Rāmacandra from his āśrama, Ravana sent Mārīca in the form of a golden deer. And when Lord Rāmacandra saw that wonderful deer, he left his residence and followed it, and finally killed it with a sharp arrow, just as Lord Śiva killed Dakṣa. Okay, now we're doing this one together. Dakṣa Dhamena Vikavad Vipane Samaksham. Dakṣa Dhamena Vikavad Vipane Samaksham. Vade Haraja Vitaya Yapitayam. Vade Haraja Vitaya Yapitayam. Ratravane Kripanavat Priyaya Yapiyukta. Ratravane Kripanavat Priyaya Yapiyukta. Stri Sanginam Gatamiti Pratayam Chachara. Stri Sanginam Gatamiti Pratayam Chachara. Raksho Dhamena Vikavad Vipane Samaksham. Raksho Dhamena Vikavad Vipane Samaksham. Vade Haraja Juvitaya Yapitayam. Vade Haraja Juvitaya Yapitayam. Ratravane Kripanavat Priyaya Viyukta. Ratravane Stri Sanginam Gatamiti Pratayam Chachara. Stri Sanginam Gatamiti Pratayam Chachara. Raksho Dhamena Vikavad Vipane Samaksham. Raksho Dhamena Vikavad Vipane Samaksham. Vade Haraja Juvitaya Yapitayam. Ratravane Kripanavat Priyaya Viyukta. Stri Sanginam Gatam Iti Pratayam Chachara. Stri Sanginam Gatam Iti Pratayam Chachara. Raksho Dhamena Vikavad Vipane Samaksham. viyukta.
Srisanginam gatamati pratayam chachara.
Srisanginam gatamati pratayam chachara. Rakshodamena vikavad vipine samaksham. Vayadeha raja duhitaya payapitayam. Rākṣavane vipanavat priyaya viyukta. Srisanginam gatamiti pratayam chachara. Vaishnava. Rakshodamena vikavad vipine samaksham. Vayadeha raja duhitaya payapitayam. Rākṣavane vipanavat priyaya viyukta. Srisanginam gatamiti pratayam chachara. Rakshodamena vikavad vipine samaksham. Vayadeha raja duhitaya payapitayam. Rākṣavane vipanavat priyaya viyukta. Srisanginam gatamiti pratayam chachara. Raksha Adamena. By the most wicked among Rākṣasas. Rāvaṇa. Vikravat. Like a tiger. Vipine. In the forest. Āśrama. Unprotected. Videha raja juhitari. In this condition of Mother Sītā, the daughter of the King of Videha, Apayapitaya, having been kidnapped, Ratra, with his brother, Rāvaṇa, in the forest, Kripanavat, as if a very distressed person, Priyaya, by his dear wife, Viyukta, separated, Srisanginam, of persons attracted to or connected with women. Gatim, destination. Iti, thus. Patayam, giving an example. Chachara, wandered. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When Rāmacandra entered the forest and Lakṣmaṇa was also absent, the worst of the Rākṣasas, Rāvaṇa, kidnapped Sītādevī, the daughter of the King of Videha, just as a tiger seizes unprotected sheep when the shepherd is absent. Then Lord Rāmacandra wandered in the forest with his brother Lakṣmaṇa, as if very much distressed due to separation from his wife. Thus he showed by his personal example the condition of a person attached to women. Purport. In this verse, the words Srisanginam gatam iti indicate that the condition of a person attached to women was shown by the Lord himself. According to moral instructions, grihe narim vivarjaya, when one goes on a tour, one should not bring his wife. Formerly, men used to travel without conveyances, but still, as far as possible, when one leaves home, one should not take his wife with him, especially if one is in such a condition as Lord Rāma when banished by the order of his father. Whether in the forest or at home, if one is attached to women, this attachment is always troublesome, as shown by the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his personal example. Of course, this is the material side of Sri Sangi, but the situation of Lord Rāmacandra is spiritual, for he does not belong to the material world. Narayana paro vyaktat. Narayan is beyond the material creation, because he is the creator of the material world. He's not subject to the conditions of the material world. The separation of Lord Rāmacandra from Sītā is spiritually understood as vipralambha, which is an activity of the Ladini potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, belonging to the Shringar Ras, the mellow of conjugal love in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has all the dealings of love, displaying the symptoms called the Sattvika, Sanchari, Vilapa, Murcha, and Umada. Thus, when Lord Rāmacandra was separated from Sītā, all these spiritual symptoms were manifested. The Lord is neither impersonal nor impotent. Rather, he is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, the eternal form of knowledge and bliss. Thus, he has all the symptoms of spiritual bliss. Feeling separation from one's beloved is also an item of spiritual bliss. As explained by Srila Sarup Damodar Goswami, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikirtir, Ladini Shakti. The dealings of love between Radha and Krishna are displayed as the pleasure potency of the Lord. The Lord is the original source of all pleasure, the reservoir of all pleasure. Lord Rāmacandra therefore manifested the truth both spiritually and materially. Materially, those who are attached to women suffer. But spiritually, when there are feelings of separation between the Lord and his pleasure potency, the spiritual bliss of the Lord increases. This is further explained in Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajananti mamudha manusham tanamashrutam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. One who does not know the spiritual potency of the Supreme Personality of God thinks of the Lord as an ordinary human being. But the Lord's mind, intelligence, and senses could never be affected by material conditions. This fact is further explained in the Skanda Purana, as quoted by Madhvacharya. Nitya Purna Sukha Jnana Sarupo Sho Yato Vibhu Vato Sharama Ityakya Tasya Dukkam Kuto Tapi Tatapi Loka Shikshartam Adukko Dukka Vartivat Antarhitam Loka Drishya Sitam Asit Smaraniva Gyanpant Gyapanaratam Artam Punanitya Sambandha Svamanashriya Ayodhyaya Vinirkavachan Sarvalokasya Cheshvara Pratyaksham Tu Shriya Sardam Jagaman Nandir Avraya Nakshatra Masha Ganitam Trayodasha Sohashrakam Brahmaloka Samam Chakre Samashtam Ishiti Mandalam Ramo Ramo Rama Iti Sarvesham Abhavat Dada Sabha Rama Mayo Loko Yada Ramas 12 Palayat. It was actually impossible for Rāvaṇa to take away Sītā. The form of Sītā taken by Rāvaṇa was an illusory representation of Mother Sītā. Maya Sītā. When Sītā was tested in the fire, this Maya Sītā was burned, and the real Sītā came out of the fire. And further understanding to be derived from this example is that of a woman, however powerful she may be in the material world, must be given protection. For as soon as she is unprotected, she will be exploited by Rākṣasas like Rāvaṇa. Here the words Videha Raja Juhitari indicate that before Mother Sītā was married to Lord Rāmacandra, she was protected by her father, Videha Raja. When she was married, she was protected by her husband. Therefore, the conclusion is that a woman should always be protected. According to the Vedic rule, there is no scope for a woman's being independent, āśrama. For a woman could not protect herself independently. Om Gyanantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Nitam Gena Tvashnaya Shri Gurudev. So it's my great transcendental pleasure to be back at Mayapur after so many years. Those of you who are residents here, you don't know how fortunate you are. Maybe you do know how fortunate you are, but if you go out for a while and then you come back in, it's like amazing, you know, how much mercy there is here. So this, you know, when we study Prabhupada's books, oftentimes we get realizations that are applicable in our lives began. So there's an awful lot that can be culled from these three verses. The Supreme Lord is the Purusha. He's the ultimate enjoyer. He's the Ishvara, the ultimate controller. And all of his expansions, his energies, actually non-different than him, but yet he remains separate. But he's the creator of all of this. It's a very significant point, you know. Then Prabhupada says, you know, in that translation, what is it? Aham savasya prabhavo mata savam pravartate iti matva ajante mam buddhabhava samabhitaha. So if one understands that, then he can worship Krishna with all of his heart. Just give everything to Krishna. So that understanding, you know, is sometimes a little elusive for the conditioned soul. You know, that's actually, everything's Krishna's. And Krishna is, we're meant for his enjoyment. Jivara Sarupa Hoy Krishnara Nichadas. But we get confused, we're thinking we're the enjoyers. That's what, you know, when someone takes birth in this material world, he gets programmed right from the very get-go that, you know, this place is meant for your enjoyment. And that's what the whole education, how many of you have graduated from university? Please raise your hand. I mean, weren't you programmed right from the, you know, from the time you entered primary school right up through university, that if you do really well in school, then you'll be very happy and can enjoy this material world? Isn't that what takes place, pretty much? So, you know, it's very powerful. But Krishna consciousness, it's really, it turns it completely upside down. Because what we're meant to do as devotees is to engage everything in Krishna's service. Give him pleasure. And it's naturally, if we do that, if that's our focus, Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. If we focus like that, you know, just do what Krishna desires, what he wants, naturally we're going to be blissful, we're going to be very joyful. Because we're properly situated. Now here, Ravana's sister, she had these lusty desires to enjoy Rāma, you know, on, you know, this material concept. And I'm the enjoyer. She's coming to Rāma with that. So what happened to her? Cut off her nose, cut off her ears. That's what happens. You know, we're thinking that, you know, somehow or other I can squeeze some enjoyment out of this material realm, out of the sense objects. somehow it makes me happy, but just the opposite is what takes place. We may not get our nose cut off, or our ears cut off, but other things seem to take place. I mean, reflect back on your life, when you've been in a sense gratificatory mood, and the outcome of that. It's quite an eye-opener. There's one verse that I always recited as a brahmachari, but it's relevant for grahastas, it's relevant for all of us. This is from Prahlāda Maharaj's prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev on the 9th chapter, the 7th canto. Yanmaitu nadi grihamedi sukham hitucham kandu yanena karayori vadukadukam tripyanti neha kripaya. Senior moment here. Kanduti-van manasijam vishaheta-dira. Here Prahlāda Maharaj compares sex life to the rubbing of two hands together to relieve an itch. And so-called so-called grihastas who have no spirituality think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness. Although actually, it's a source of all distress. So those who are dhira, who are sober, who tolerate this itching, are not subjected to the suffering of the fools and rascals. So it's quite a strong statement, and it may not just be, sex life per se, but just attachment to sense objects, to try and enjoy them, not recognizing the supremacy and the position of Krishna as the ultimate enjoyer, and we're meant to provide that enjoyment to him. We go through this role reversal. Icha dvesha samudvaina dvandva mohena bharata. We come into this world overcome by the dualities of desire and hate, desiring to play act as Krishna, and an envy of him. Why can't I do this? So this comes out with Suparnaka, her approaching Krishna for her own enjoyment. So mixed devotional service is a little bit like that. What's in it for me kind of modality, rather than how can I, regardless of the circumstances, give the optimal pleasure to Krishna. Sometimes Krishna will put us in really difficult situations. Look what happened to Sītā. Difficult situation. But Sītā remained steadfast in her loving devotion to Sri Rāma. So to recognize, to really be conscious of this aspect of sambandhigyan, that this material energy, we have a relationship with it. Krishna has a relationship with material energy. We have a relationship with Krishna. I mean, it's all interwoven, but it's Krishna's energy. Just as Ram's Sītā, very, very dear internal energy of Sri Rāmacandra. So here's Rāvaṇa going after her. Prabhupada in 2nd Canto, 7th chapter, 23rd verse purport describes that we're actually, if we're thinking that we can enjoy Krishna's nature separately from offering it in love to him, we're no different than Rāvaṇa and Suparnaka. Is that how you pronounce it? Suparnaka. Like on Saturday, Hari Leela gave class, and he was describing how in India you grow up hearing about Ram, and it's like just so much part of the mindset of anybody that grows up in India. In America, I grew up with Bowler Rama. These are bowling alleys. I don't even, maybe in India they don't even know what a bowling alley is, but that word Ram is there. But that's about the extent of my exposure to Ram, growing up. But anyway, so Prabhupada describes that if someone is trying to enjoy Krishna's energy without recognizing Krishna's supremacy and offering it for Krishna's pleasure to him, no different than Ravana, the Supernarka. So we have to look at that. Are we, we got to, have our radar, our Ravana radar screen up. Say, are we in the Ravana category now in our mindset? So Krishna consciousness means we're always trying to give pleasure to Krishna. We don't waste a second of our time. Hanuman, he was like that. He had no time other than to try and do the very best he could to serve Rama. So he was famous in our Shastras for that mentality. So the same thing is applicable for us. We have Hanuman took up the mission, of freeing Sītā and wiping out, these Rākṣasas that took so much advantage for their own pleasure. So, Srila Prabhupada also gave us a tremendous mission, which just requires great intensity to execute. And one startling realization that came to me in returning to Mayapur is just the numbers. I mean, I went through, I think, 17 Christmas and New Year holiday periods in Mayapur. But my goodness, the numbers of people coming through the pilgrimage is just mind-blowing, the level of expansion. And so this expansion in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, there's this prediction, Prabhupada would quote it on many occasions, of a 10,000-year golden age of Krishna consciousness. The Abhut Mandir plays a significant role in this. Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes this clear in Lord Nityananda. So this expansion of the movement throughout the world requires that same kind of focus that Hanuman had, same kind of focus that Sītā had, as opposed to that lack of focus or self-centeredness that is displayed by Ravana and Supernarka. So this is the kind of the essence of Krishna consciousness. And there are some other points that are brought up in the last verse of purport. We're dealing with, there's the external kind of example that Ram is giving, is Maryada Purushottam, kind of giving the best standard for society. I don't know if we say it on the material platform, but at least on a very practical platform of the what takes place if we become overly attached to the opposite sex, whether woman for man or man for woman, that it creates distress. But we've covered that to some extent already. But this is one of the instructions that's coming, from the last verse of purport. I was actually thinking, when I went through this verse of purport, that maybe I should ask the management if I could have a special dispensation and be allowed to speak for 3 hours on this verse of purport, because it's just so deep and so extensive. So I'm really struggling to try and keep it concise here. I didn't think that I would get that dispensation, but so I didn't try. But it crossed my mind. The other aspect, so that's there. That we just have to really be on guard. It's not that we, just like I have many godbrothers, goduncles that I have great affection for, but that affection is to serve Krishna. So within the Grahastha ashram, it's not that we don't have affection for our spouse, but it's in the context of rendering service to Krishna. That's the basis. It's not like on the level of the skin disease, as Prabhupada refers to it in the prayers of Queen Kunti. But it's not that, that we're, Queen Kunti is asking to have her attachment for family severed. So does that mean that we should all apply for divorce? That's not the idea. The idea is that we have it in the proper consciousness, that relationship is based upon serving Krishna, and then it's not on the bodily platform, it's on the devotional platform, and it has an uplifting characteristic rather than it doesn't pull us down into the modes of material nature. So that's one aspect of this last part. But then we understand that Krishna, Lord Ram, is totally transcendental to these material considerations. So that lesson can be garnered and applied in a practical situation. But then there's also this whole internal message that's being conveyed. I mean, Ram knew that Mārīca was play acting as a deer. So why did he let this whole episode take place and let Rāvaṇa come in and kidnap him? Any ideas?
Instruct us.
Huh?
Instruct us.
Say again?
And for the pastime, to instruct us.
Okay, well, it's the pastime, but ultimately, Prabhupada goes into a description of Vipralambha, this loving ecstasy in a mode of separation. So it increased the joy and the bliss of Sītā. She was crying day and night for Rāmacandra. This so deep, went deeper and deeper and deeper. She was in Sri Lanka prison for about a year. So, externally, very difficult. Internally, extremely nourishing, uplifting, ecstatic, blissful. So so difficult situations aren't necessarily bad for us. Vipada shantata shastra tatra tatra jagadguru bhavato darshanam yacha apana bhavadarshana. This is Queen Kunti. May those calamities happen again and again. Because when they happen, and you come to us, Krishna, when we see you, we no longer see repeated birth and death. But the ecstasy oftentimes comes when we're in the most difficult, most materially challenging circumstances. It's the way Krishna works. That's right. Who was? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, it was. Krishna. I'm trying to think. I'm drawing a blank. This wonderful sannyasi that spent so many years serving in Vrindavan, and he gave a class about 4 days ago. Here. No one else remembers his name either? I thought I was the only one that had senior moments. Okay, so anyway, he was mentioning how Prabhupada said we should learn, and then Mahatma asked if there was a reference for this. Huh? Yeah. Okay, Janmastami. I've known him for years. That's what happens when you get to be 60. His brain gets to be 69, I guess. So he was saying that Prabhupada said we should learn two things: the Mahamantra and Tattenu Kumpam Shukshamikshamano Punjane Vakritam Vipakram Ridvag Vakavir Viditan Namaste Jiveta Yo Mukti Padai Sitayapar. Prabhupada paraphrases that on page 92 of Nectar Devotion, and he says this should be the guide for all devotees. This is one who tolerates all kinds of adverse conditions, understanding they're coming about as a result of one's past misdeeds, and goes on rendering service, offering obeisance to the Lord with one's body, mind, and words, goes on rendering service, and he becomes eligible to enter into pure devotional service, to go back to Godhead. So it's a very key point. But that actually, our relationship can become intensified under the difficult circumstances. So that's something to be learned. I mean, there's a lot more internal discussion that can take place in Vipralambha, but I think we've touched it sufficiently. I think I'll stop here, and maybe there's some question, comments. Yes, Prabhu. Just wait 1 second, the microphone's coming right back to you.
I agree. No, Maharaj, Prabhu, thank you very much for the class. Prabhupada said that you're supposed to leave your wife at home when you travel. I mean, in the purport, he was saying.
Yeah.
But if you're pretending to take Varna Cross, aren't you supposed to, in the latter years, take your wife with you? Travel together?
I think I seem to recall that that's the case. So this is this is a Shastra conjunction, for the Vedic period, and there's points that can be garnered, obviously, from it. That if we're on the bodily platform, then all hell breaks loose. If we're on the transcendental platform, maybe that's the key. Vanapras means you're finished with all the attempt to enjoy, and therefore havoc doesn't come. So, I've personally traveled many times. I don't think I remember hearing this instruction before, with my wife. And there's sometimes there's havoc, but we see, coming many devotees, many pilgrims come with their whole families to Sridham Mayapur. I think that outweighs any kind of adversity, that may arise from traveling with one's wife, to have the mercy and the Shakti, experience the Shakti of Sridham Mayapur. I mean, it wasn't something that I'm aware of that was stressed very much by Srila Prabhupada in the West. And others may have some other thoughts on this. Yes, Prabhu?
You can hear me?
I'm sorry, I'm a little bewildered by also this statement, because...
Speak nice and loud.
Yeah, because I've read also other places that the householder is supposed to travel with his wife to hold the places when he travels to pilgrimages. Then it's an injunction that he should travel with the wife, otherwise he gets sinful reaction. So I don't understand this.
Yeah, so, I think that's, if you're going out to, travel, whether to enjoy, to go to some rock and roll concert or something, then it's, probably can expect some difficulties. If you're coming to Sridham Mayapur to get the mercy of Shri Panchatattva, just expect mercy and expect to be very blissful. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for the class. You were mentioning that the difficult situations, how Mother Sītā, so that intensified, it was externally very difficult, but internally it brings us more closer. So my question, what I wanted to ask Prabhuji is that most of the times the difficult situation which comes in our life is due to, at least for me, is because of my mistakes. The mistakes which I do, if I'm not serious in devotion, or if I'm not proper in my sadhana, so then a lot of situation comes. So then it becomes very difficult. Most of the time, instead of getting more closer to the Lord, the feeling, it pulls down, it pulls me down. So I'm not able to handle this situation. What do you want to say?
Okay, that's a very good point. As a matter of fact, there's a historical reference that I can give you within the history of our movement. The 2 years prior to the Srila Prabhupada centennial, 1996, one senior devotee, Vyasaki Prabhu, he's quite a famous Kirtaniya, he traveled around the world and met with over 500 devotees that had distanced themselves from the movement, and most of them had stopped practicing sadhana bhakti. And the reason I know about this, because during the Srila Prabhupada centennial, which was observed by different petals of a lotus flower, and one petal was reuniting Srila Prabhupada's family. Those of us old-timers that have been around for quite a while know that in the 10, 15 years after Srila Prabhupada left, many devotees kind of went out. So this is an attempt to bring them back. And so one of the ways that this was observed by the International Centennial Committee, which was headed by Lokanath, you can confirm this, was to publish 2 issues of Unity magazine. Okay, and this was about, kind of coming together. In the first article of the first issue was an interview of Vyasaki regarding his trip around the world and visiting all these devotees that had stopped practicing. In the first paragraph of his response, he identified 2 common denominators in every single one of these devotees, which is quite remarkable. It's almost like, within the scientific world there's evidence-based research, okay? So here's evidence-based of the importance of this verse, being able to handle it, apply it when the tough times come. So the first common denominator, now, common denominator is something that's used in the English language. I don't know if it's used so much here in India. It means common trait, something that's held in common. The first one is that every single one of these devotees had difficulty applying the principles enunciated by 10.14.8. Okay, so therefore, that's why Prabhupada emphasized it so much. Second is that every single one of these devotees still had love and affection for Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so then it seems almost contradictory. They have love and devotion for Srila Prabhupada, then why aren't they practicing? But it also, we can understand that we have to prepare ourselves for the Maha tests. I remember I was 5 years in the movement. I was actually in Mayapur for the first time visiting India, and my first Maha test came. It was heavy. And right after, in the midst of processing the challenges that Krishna was putting me through, one has been sannyasi, won't mention any names now, but he suggested that I learn this verse. So I did. And I didn't fully understand it, it kind of became a friend, because there were a lot of other tests that came, Maha test, It seems like there's an upward spiral of the intensity. We got to surrender more and more and more. That's how Krishna arranges things. So, I think, that you're not alone. It's a common problem. That when the heat gets turned up, we may not know exactly how to deal with it. So the point is, prepare for it, because it's going to come. I don't know any devotee that doesn't go through Maha tests. If they maintain strong sadhana, if they hear and chant a lot, one thing that I did is I created, and I can send it to you, give me your email address afterwards, I created an 11-page document with different quotes from Prabhupada on how to deal with distress in different parts of his books. The purport of the 10.14.8, this was the first chapter after Prabhupada left. That was done by his disciples. But one friend of mine was in San Diego when there was a whole discussion going on between Dravida, Jayadvaita Swami, there were a few other Swamis, I think Mukunda Maharaj, and they all had the same agreement that these were instructions that were garnered from Prabhupada's instructions from various lectures, letters, and whatever. It's all compressed into that purport. So it's a really good one. Because it's actually Krishna's doing this. You know, there's another nice reference. I'll get back to that point, but 1.9.19 purport. Prabhupada describes that this is Bhishma Dev. You know, he's in a really comfortable position. He's not on a waterbed. He's not on a memory foam mattress. He's on a bed of arrows. Think about it. You know, not exactly the ideal material situation. And then Prabhupada in the purport describes different bhavs, relationships that Krishna has with his devotees. He starts out with the Sakya-ras, this wonderful loving relationship that he has with Arjuna. Yeah, I mean, just incredible depth of loving exchange. And then he goes on and describes Mother Yashoda, mentions the four Kumaras, and Sukadeva Goswami. And then he says, the tribulations a devotee undergoes is another transcendental bhav with the Lord. It's actually a loving exchange. If we can actually see it that way, and this is Krishna coming to us to free us from this entanglement of thinking that I can enjoy this material world separately from Him. You know, then it's not so hard. I remember, you know, this was about 1.5 years after I'd memorized the verse and was applying it in kind of like not such difficult circumstances, but you know, just it was theoretical. And then I was in Vrindavan. This was pre-bottled water days. And there were like different taps around the ISKCON temple that were identified as good drinking water. Well, anyway, you know, I did it. I drank water and I got super sick. I won't go into all the details, and probably not appropriate for the Vyasa-san, but I was super sick. I lost something like 35, 40 pounds in 3 weeks, and I couldn't keep anything anyway. But I would go through periods where I would experience excruciating cramps in my stomach. And I started reciting this verse in my mind. And I probably was experiencing a level of pain that was comparable to, I haven't gone through it in this lifetime, of childbirth, you know, labor pains. It was so heavy. And I couldn't even call out, but I did it in my mind, you know, recited this verse, and I felt very blissful, in spite of, you know, really painful, disgusting circumstances. So it does work, and I can send you all these quotes, and it may help you in the next test, but just know that it's going to happen, and equip yourself with the philosophy so that you can handle it. It's like one time I taught a seminar, I called it Transcendental Judo Seminar. Okay, now that sounds like a weird seminar. It was all about, you know, how to apply this verse in your life. Just like if I got really mad at you, and you're a black belt in judo, and I come up to you, and I want to hit you in the nose, so you take my arm, you use that force that I was hoping to break your nose with, and you use it to flip me over. So you can take the stresses that come through the material energy and flip them over and turn them into transcendental ecstasy, just by understanding that this is actually Krishna's loving exchange. Does that make sense? Okay, anything else? Yes, Devaki. Someone run that back to... It doesn't seem like it's on.
Anyway, I'd like to add a third component, which is absolutely necessary to overcome Krishna's test.
Okay.
And that's sheltering relationships.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm going to repeat this for the audience that's out in the transcendental realm. If anybody's over there in the little control headquarters that can turn the mic on, it'd be helpful. But Mother Devaki made a really powerful point that, you know, one of the biggest resources that we have in processing high levels of distress is the association of devotees. Guyam Akyati Prichati. You know, matter of fact, I don't know why I left that out, because it's so important. I mean, I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't discovered that. You know, I got like 2 or 3 people, different parts of the world, you know, when the heat's turned up that I go to, and I can reveal my mind in confidence, and I know that I can come out the other side and survive, you know, the test. So, super important. This is a loving exchange, but it's also something that Krishna arranges so that we can go deeper in our relationships. He arranged this whole thing with Sītā being kidnapped. That wasn't, he's the supreme controller, not that he was being fooled by Mārīca. It's not that he didn't know, you know, that Sītā was pushing Lakṣmaṇa to go out and get Rāma because she was so worried. She heard this cry in the forest, thought it was Rāma in trouble. He let it happen. He arranged it. So don't think that, you know, this is, you know, this is not, we're not under the laws of karma once we take up ultimate bhakti. This is Krishna directly coming and helping us with our spiritual lives. We have to have that kind of faith. And then the tests become much easier if we can just see Krishna behind it. But that association of devotees is absolutely essential. We cannot make spiritual advancement without it. We cannot pass the test that Krishna puts our way without that support. Thank you, Mother Devaki. Any other points? Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.